This story is for women whose dreams have been called foolish. Tonight you'll meet Isolde. She's 28. She writes poetry on the shores of Lake Como. And the man she loves has just told her she's wasting her life. It's 1962. The war is over, but its shadows remain. And Isolde is trying to create beauty in a world that demands practicality. You don't need to do anything. Just listen. Let the Italian twilight carry you somewhere soft. The cat is waiting. Isolde Ferretti sits on the floor of her room with torn paper scattered around her like snow, and she cannot remember why she ever believed her words mattered. The villa is old. 17th century. Stone walls thick enough to muffle screams. Windows that overlook Lake Como, water dark as ink under the September sky, mountains rising like sleeping giants, the distant lights of Bellagio flickering like uncertain stars. She's lived here for 3 months. A gift from her uncle, who pitied her after the divorce. Take the villa, he'd said. Write your poetry. Find yourself. As if finding yourself were as simple as changing locations. As if the broken pieces of who you are rearrange themselves differently in beautiful places. The room smells of stone and lake water and the faint vanilla of her typewriter ribbon. An Olivetti Lettera 22. Portable. Perfect. The same model Hemingway used, though Isolde would never presume to compare herself. She's been writing since dawn. A poem about loss. About the war that took her father. About the husband who took her confidence. About the slow erosion of self that happens when you love someone who cannot see you. 14 pages. Her best work. Raw. Honest. True. And then Marco arrived. Marco Santini. 43. Literary critic. Published in La Stampa and Corriere della Sera. Friend of Montale. Acquaintance of Calvino. A man whose opinion could make or destroy a writer's career. And Isolde's lover. For 6 weeks. Since she arrived at the villa? Since he appeared at a gathering in town, saw her reading Pavese, struck up conversation. Since he kissed her on the villa terrace under a moon so bright it hurt to look at. She'd been so careful. So cautious after the divorce. After Giuseppe, who'd married her at 22 and spent 6 years slowly convincing her she was stupid. That her poetry was adolescent nonsense. That real women focused on children and cooking, not scribbling in notebooks. But Marco seemed different. He read literature. Understood art. Encouraged her writing. Until tonight. He'd read her 14 pages. Slowly. Carefully. Making small noises of consideration. While Isolde sat rigid with hope and terror, waiting for his verdict. When he finished, he set down the pages. Looked at her with those dark eyes she thought were kind. Isolde, he said. Voice gentle. Pitying. It's very naive. The word landed like a stone. What? The language. The metaphors. It's all very, how do I say this kindly, very young. Very feminine. Very emotional. There's no rigor. No intellectual framework. It reads like a schoolgirl's diary. She stared at him. I thought. Her voice was small. Childlike. I thought it was honest. Raw. Real. Honest isn't enough, Marco said. He stood. Paced. Became the professor. The critic. The authority. Poetry isn't therapy, Isolde. It's craft. Architecture. You can't just vomit feelings onto a page and call it art. There has to be structure. Control. Discipline. But Plath had discipline. Behind the emotion was technique. Yours is just. He gestured at the pages. Chaos. Something in Isolde's chest cracked. Should I revise it? Marco looked at her. Really looked. And she saw it. The pity. The condescension. The certainty that she was playing at being a writer instead of actually being one. I think, he said carefully, you should consider whether poetry is really your calling. Perhaps you're trying to be something you're not. There's no shame in that. Most people aren't artists. Most people are normal, happy, content with simpler lives. He kissed her forehead. Paternal. Dismissive. I have to go. Dinner in Milan tomorrow. Interview with Ungaretti. Real work. He left. And Isolde sat with his words echoing in the stone room. Naive. Schoolgirl. Chaos. Not really your calling. She picked up the 14 pages. Read them again. Tried to see what he saw. Couldn't. All she saw was her heart. Her truth. Her voice. But maybe that wasn't enough. Maybe he was right. Maybe she was foolish. A divorced woman playing poet in a borrowed villa, pretending she had something to say. She tore the first page. Then the second. Then all 14. Ripped them into pieces. Let them fall around her like autumn leaves. Like snow. Like the remnants of belief. Now she sits among the fragments. Her words scattered. Her hands shaking. Her eyes dry because she's cried so much in the past 6 years that she's forgotten how. That's when she sees the cat. Gray. Tabby striped. Sitting on the windowsill. Looking at her with eyes like old amber. Like ancient coins. Like something that's seen civilizations rise and fall and knows that this moment, this pain, is just one small thread in the vast tapestry of human suffering. Go away, Isolde says in Italian. Then in English, because her mother was British and sometimes English feels safer for pain. I don't need witnesses to my humiliation. The cat doesn't move. Isolde looks at it. Really looks. The stripes are remarkable. Charcoal and ash. Smoke and silver. Like watercolor shadows. Like the fingerprints of night itself pressed into fur. The cat jumps down. Not hesitant. Not asking permission. Just entering. As if this room, this villa, this moment belongs to it as much as to Isolde. It walks through the torn pages. Sniffs one. Bats it with a paw. Don't, Isolde says. Those were. But the cat ignores her. Picks up a fragment of paper in its mouth. Tosses it in the air. Pounces. Plays. Stop, Isolde says. Voice breaking. Stop playing with my failure. The cat looks at her. Blinks slowly. Returns to the paper. Slides on it. Scatters it. Makes chaos more chaotic. And Isolde, exhausted, heartbroken, empty, starts to laugh. Bitter laugh. Broken laugh. But laugh nonetheless. You're right, she tells the cat. Why not? Why not play with the pieces? They're no good for anything else. The cat meows. Soft. Almost approving. And Isolde realizes, the cat doesn't care that these pages were torn. Doesn't care that Marco called them naive. Doesn't care about critics or structure or whether poetry is craft or chaos. The cat is simply here. Simply itself. Simply playing because play is what cats do. Who are you? Isolde whispers. The cat settles among the papers. Starts grooming. Licking its striped paw with methodical precision. The ultimate image of self-possession. And Isolde begins to speak. Italy. Lake Como. Villa Margherita. September 1962. Isolde Ferretti. 20 years old. Poet. Divorced. Alone. Except she's not alone. She has Marco. Who is worse than alone? She was born in 1934. Grew up during the war. Remembers the bombings. The hunger. The fear. Her father died in 43. Partisan. Shot by Germans in the mountains above Como. She was 9. Her mother raised her alone. British mother, Italian father. Isolde grew up between languages. Between worlds. Between identities. She started writing at 12. Poems about her father. About war. About loss. Her mother encouraged it. You have his gift, she'd say. Giuseppe had the soul of a poet. At 22, Isolde married Giuseppe Moretti. Lawyer. Respectable. From a good family. Her mother approved. Security after years of struggle. The marriage was death by 1,000 cuts. Giuseppe wanted a wife. A mother for his future children. A hostess for his dinners. A decoration for his life. Not a poet. Not a dreamer. Not a woman with her own voice. He tolerated her writing at first. Indulged it. Like a hobby. Like needlepoint. But when she tried to publish, when she sent poems to literary journals, he became cruel. You're embarrassing yourself. Embarrassing me. Real women don't parade their emotions in public. She withdrew her submissions. Stopped sending out work. Wrote only in secret. Hiding notebooks like contraband. The marriage ended after 6 years. No children. Giuseppe blamed her. Said she was defective. Cold. Too intellectual. Too masculine. She didn't fight for anything in the divorce. Just wanted out. Wanted air. Wanted to exist without apologizing. Her uncle offered the villa. Start over. Be who you are. And she tried. For 3 months she wrote honestly. Freely. Without Giuseppe's voice in her head telling her she was foolish. Until Marco. Marco seemed safe. Educated. Someone who understood art. Someone who could see her. But he's just Giuseppe in a different costume. Different words. Same message, you're not good enough. Your voice doesn't matter. Be smaller. Be quieter. Be less. And Isolde, exhausted from years of fighting to exist, almost believed him. Almost tore up her voice along with the pages. But the cat is here now. The cat who doesn't ask permission. Who doesn't justify its existence. Who plays among ruins because play is its nature. And Isolde is about to learn what the cat already knows, that beauty needs no defense. That creativity is not logic. That the opinion of men, even educated, respected, important men, is just noise. And beneath the noise is something older. Truer. More essential. The voice of the self that knows its own worth. 3:45 p.m. Isolde hands Marco the 14 pages. Freshly typed. Still warm from the Olivetti. They're sitting on the terrace. Lake Como spreads below them like molten silver. September light turning everything honey gold. The air smells of jasmine and coming autumn. Marco accepts the pages. Serious. Important. A man being asked to deliver judgment. Read whenever you want, Isolde says. Trying to sound casual. Failing. No rush. I'll read now, Marco says. I have time before I leave. So she sits. Watching him. Watching his face for clues. He reads slowly. Makes small noises. Ah. Isolde's hands twist in her lap. She wants a cigarette. Doesn't smoke. Wishes she did. The poem is about her father. About watching him leave for the mountains. About not knowing it was the last time. About living with ghosts. It's her best work. She knows it. Feels it. The words came from somewhere deep and true and unfiltered. Marco finishes. Sets down the pages. Looks at the lake. Silence. Well? Isolde asks. Voice small. It's... He pauses. Choosing words. It's very emotional. Is that bad? Not bad. Just uncontrolled. Poetry isn't about raw emotion, Isolde. It's about shaping emotion. Containing it. Making it universal through craft. But I thought honesty was important. Authenticity. Marco smiles. Gentle. Condescending. Honesty without skill is just confession. Anyone can confess. Not everyone can create art. The words hit like slaps. So you're saying it's not good? I'm saying it's naive. It's what I'd expect from a young girl writing in her diary. Not from a serious poet. You use too many adjectives. The metaphors are obvious. The structure is loose. There's no... He searches for the word. Rigor. Isolde feels herself shrinking. becoming smaller, younger, stupider. How do I fix it? Marco looks at her. Really looks. And she sees it. The pity. The certainty that she's playing at something she'll never truly be. I'm not sure you can. Not without completely rewriting. And even then, he shrugs. Maybe poetry isn't your medium. Have you considered prose? Something less demanding? Something less demanding. As if poetry were advanced mathematics and she were a child struggling with addition. My father was a poet, Isolde says. Voice defensive. Desperate. Yes. And you've told me he was quite good. But talent isn't hereditary. Just because your father could write doesn't mean you can. The statement hangs between them. Isolde wants to argue. To defend herself. To say that her father would have loved these pages. That her mother cried when she read them. That something in her knows they're good. But Marco is published. Respected. Important. Connected to the literary world in ways she isn't. If he says they're naive, then maybe they are. Maybe she's been fooling herself. Maybe the encouragement from her mother, from friends, from teachers was just kindness. Pity. Maybe she's not a poet at all. I should go, Marco says. Checks his watch. Long drive to Milan. Think about what I said. Maybe take a break from writing. Clear your head. Live a little. You're young. Beautiful. You don't need to prove anything. He kisses her. Forehead. Paternal. Dismissive. I'll call you next week. We'll have dinner. He leaves. Car engine starting. Gravel crunching. Gone. And Isolde sits on the terrace holding 14 pages that suddenly feel like evidence of her inadequacy. She goes inside. To her room. Reads them again. Naive. Obvious. Loose. No rigor. She hears Marco's voice in every line. Sees the flaws he pointed out. Can't see the beauty anymore. Just the failure. She picks up the first page. Tears it. The sound is satisfying. Definitive. Like closing a door. She tears the rest. All 14 pages. Rips them into smaller and smaller pieces until her hands are tired and the floor is covered in fragments. There. Done. The naive schoolgirl poems are gone. And Isolde sits among the ruins of her voice. That's when the cat appears. The cat plays with the torn pages. Slides on them. Bats them with delicate paws. Creates small tornadoes of paper. Isolde watches. Numb. Empty. They're garbage, she tells the cat. You're playing with garbage. The cat looks at her. Blinks. Returns to play. There's something hypnotic about it. The cat's absolute focus. Its joy in something so simple. So meaningless. You don't care, do you? Isolde says. You don't care that a very important man said these were worthless. You're just enjoying yourself. The cat catches a larger piece. The word father visible in Isolde's typescript. Tosses it. Pounces. And Isolde feels something crack in her chest. That's my father, she whispers. That word. That piece. That's him. The cat holds the paper gently in its mouth. Brings it to Isolde. Drops it at her feet. An offering. A retrieval. A return. Isolde picks it up. Smooths it. The word father, in her Olivetti typeface. The F slightly raised because the key sticks. She remembers writing this. Remembers the feeling. The memory of her father's hands. The way he'd recite Dante while they walked by the lake. The way he'd called her his piccola poetessa. Little poet. He never said she needed rigor. Never said she needed to control her emotions. Never said poetry was about architecture instead of truth. He said poetry was seeing. Really seeing. And then finding words to make others see what you saw. And she'd seen. In these 14 pages. She'd seen her father. Her loss. Her love. Her truth. Marco didn't see it. She tells the cat. He only saw what was missing. The technique. The structure. The things I don't know yet. But he didn't see what was there. The cat settles in her lap. Heavy. Warm. Real. Its fur is remarkable up close. Not just gray. Layers. Silver over charcoal. Ash over smoke. Each stripe a different shade. A whole spectrum of gray that only exists because someone, something, took the time to look closely. Like poetry, Isolde thinks. Like good poetry. The kind that reveals more the longer you look. He's wrong, she whispers. Isn't he? Marco. He's wrong. The cat purrs. Low. Steady. Like distant thunder. Like the hum of the earth itself. Isolde strokes its head. The fur is silk and steel. Soft and strong. Contradictions coexisting. I'm naive, she says. But naive doesn't mean wrong. It means I haven't learned to lie yet. Haven't learned to hide what I feel behind craft and distance and control. I still write from the wound. From the truth. And maybe that's not weakness. Maybe that's the whole point. The cat's purring intensifies. Marco writes about writing. He critiques. Analyzes. Dissects. But he doesn't create. Hasn't published his own poetry. Just judges everyone else's. And I let him judge mine. Let him make me small. Let him convince me that feeling was weakness instead of the source. She looks at the torn pages scattered around them. I can tape them back together, she realizes. They're torn but not destroyed. I can rebuild them. The cat shifts. Presses against her. Insistent. Or I can leave them torn. Let the chaos be chaos. Let the fragments be fragments. Maybe that's more honest anyway. Maybe trying to make everything neat and controlled and rigorous is the real lie. The cat meows. Sharp. Approving. Isolde laughs. Real laugh this time. Not bitter. Just amused. At herself. At Marco. At the absurdity of letting one man's opinion destroy her. He called me emotional. Like it was a diagnosis. A disease. But poetry is emotion. It's the only thing that is. You can't write about loss without feeling loss. Can't write about love without loving. Can't write about truth without being willing to bleed. She picks up another fragment. The phrase, your hands visible. My father's hands, she says. I remember them so clearly. Rough from work. Gentle when he touched my hair. Those hands held me. Held a rifle. Held a pen. Died holding a belief that Italy could be free. And I wrote about them. Honestly. Without tricks. Without distance. With all the messy emotion Marco hates. The cat stands. Walks across the scattered pages. Each step deliberate. Placing paws carefully. Creating a path through the chaos. You're showing me something, Isolde says. Aren't you? That I can walk through this. Through the criticism. Through the doubt. Through the broken pieces. I just have to keep moving. Keep being myself. Keep writing what's true even when important men tell me it's wrong. The cat sits on the windowsill. Silhouette against the darkening lake. Stripes barely visible in the twilight. Thank you, Isolde whispers. For playing with my ruins. For reminding me that not everything has to be serious. That creation can be joy. That I don't have to defend my existence to anyone. The cat looks back. Gold eyes glowing. And Isolde understands. The lesson. The gift. The truth the cat came to deliver. She doesn't need Marco's approval. Doesn't need any man's permission to write. To create. To exist as an artist. She just needs to trust her own voice. Her own vision. Her own truth. Even when, especially when, it's called naive. Isolde sits with the cat until dark. Talking. Remembering. My husband did this too. She says. Voice quiet. Confessional. Giuseppe. For 6 years. Told me my writing was embarrassing. childish, self-indulgent. That real women didn't need creative outlets. That motherhood would cure me of these delusions. The cat listens. Doesn't judge. Just witnesses. I almost believed him. Actually, I did believe him. Stopped sending out poems. Stopped showing anyone my work. Wrote in secret. Hiding notebooks like they were pornography. Like my thoughts were shameful. She picks up scattered fragments. Not to tape them. Just to hold them. Feel them. And when I finally left him, when I finally said I couldn't live like that anymore, everyone asked why. What had he done? He didn't hit me. Didn't cheat. Provided well. So what was the problem? Her voice hardens. The problem was he erased me. Slowly. Carefully. With kind words and reasonable arguments. Made me doubt my own mind. My own worth. My own voice. Until I was just an echo of what he wanted me to be. The cat meows. Soft. Understanding. And then I came here. To start over. To find myself again. To write without his voice in my head. And for 3 months I did. I wrote freely. Honestly. Without censoring. Without second-guessing. I wrote like my father taught me, from the truth. She looks at the 14 torn pages. Until Marco. Who seemed different. Who seemed to understand art. Who I thought would see me. Really see me. But he's just Giuseppe with better vocabulary. Same message wrapped in literary theory instead of traditional values. You're not good enough. Be smaller. Be quieter. Know your place. Tears now. Finally. After hours of being dry. Why do I keep choosing men who want to silence me? Why do I keep letting them? The cat doesn't answer. Can't answer. Just purrs and presses against her. My father never did this, Isolde says. Never made me small. He read my childhood poems and told me they were beautiful. Saw potential. Encouraged me. Told me I had a gift. That my voice mattered. She cries harder. And he died when I was 9. And I've spent 19 years trying to find another man who sees me like he did. Who believes in me like he did. Who doesn't need me to be less so he can be more. The cat climbs into her lap again. Settles. Becomes an anchor. But maybe that's not what I need. Maybe I don't need a man to believe in me. Maybe I just need to believe in myself. The way you believe in yourself. She strokes the striped fur. Each gray band a different shade in the moonlight now streaming through the window. You don't ask permission to exist. Don't apologize for taking up space. Don't make yourself smaller to make others comfortable. You just are. Fully. Completely. Unapologetically. The cat purrs louder. I want that, Isolde whispers. I want to be that. To write without apologizing. To create without defending. To exist without needing validation from men who don't even create themselves. She looks at the torn pages one more time. Tomorrow I'll rewrite it. Not to fix Marco's criticisms. To make it more honest. More raw. More naive, if naive means true. I'll write the poem my father would have loved. That I love. That matters to me regardless of whether it ever gets published or wins prizes or impresses important men. The cat's eyes glow in the moonlight. Gold and green. Ancient and knowing. And maybe Marco will leave. Maybe he'll decide I'm too difficult. Too emotional. Too much. And that's okay. Because I'd rather be alone and authentic than coupled and erased. She feels it. The truth of that statement. The weight and the freedom. I choose me, she says. Out loud. To the cat. To herself. To the ghost of her father who taught her to see beauty and put it into words. I choose my voice. My truth. My naive, emotional, uncontrolled, undisciplined voice. Because it's mine. And it's real. And it's enough. The cat stands. Stretches. Walks to the window. Isolde follows. They look out together at Lake Como, at the mountains, at the lights of villages scattered like fallen stars. "Thank you," Isolde says, "for coming, for playing, for reminding me that torn pages are just paper, that my words still exist even when destroyed, that I can always write them again. Better, truer, more myself." The cat jumps to the windowsill. Balanced, graceful, perfect. Then it's gone, disappearing into the night, into the villa's shadows, into wherever cats go when their work is done. And Isolde stands alone. But not lonely. For the first time in 6 years, not lonely. Isolde doesn't sleep that night. She sits at her desk, loads fresh paper into the Olivetti, and begins. Not rewriting the torn poem. Writing a new one. About the cat. About torn pages. About men who fear women's voices. About choosing yourself even when it means choosing alone. She writes until dawn. Until her fingers ache and her eyes burn and the lake outside turns from black to gray to gold. When she finishes, she has 23 pages. Not 14. 23. More emotional than before. More raw. More naive. More true. She doesn't show Marco. Doesn't ask his opinion. Doesn't need it. Instead, she types a clean copy. Puts it in an envelope. Addresses it to a literary journal in Milan. One that publishes women. One that values emotion over rigor. Walks to the village. Posts it. Doesn't second guess. Then she goes to the cafe. Orders coffee. Sits by the window overlooking the lake. Marco calls that afternoon. Says he's back from Milan. Wants to see her. Dinner tonight? Isolde thinks about it. About his criticism. His condescension. His certainty that she should be smaller. "No," she says. "Thank you, but no. I don't think this is working." Silence on the line. "What isn't working?" Marco asks. Voice careful. Controlled. "You want me to write like you. Think like you. Value what you value. But I can't. I don't want to. I want to write like me. And I don't think you can accept that." More silence. "Isolde, don't be dramatic. I was just giving you constructive criticism. Trying to help." "I don't need that kind of help," she interrupts. Voice steady. Clear. "I need to find my own voice. And your help is making me smaller, not stronger. So, thank you for the time we had. But I need to be alone now." She hangs up before he can respond. Her hands shake. Her heart pounds. But underneath the fear is something else. Relief. Freedom. Power. She chose herself. For the first time since her father died. Since Giuseppe. Since all the years of making herself smaller to fit into men's ideas of what she should be. She chose her voice over their approval. And it feels like coming home. The poem gets published. 3 months later. In a small journal. No money. Little prestige. But published. Isolde frames the acceptance letter. Hangs it above her desk. She keeps writing. Sends out more work. Gets rejected. Gets accepted. Slowly builds a small reputation. Not famous. Not important in Marco's world. But real. Hers. She stays at the villa. Her uncle lets her live there indefinitely. She takes in students. Teaches English to village children. Makes enough to survive. Spends the rest of her time writing. And she's happy. Not perfectly happy. Not movie happy. But authentically happy. The kind that comes from living aligned with your truth. Men come and go. She dates occasionally. But she's different now. Knows her worth. Won't shrink for anyone. Won't silence herself to make a man comfortable. Most can't handle it. Leave when they realize she won't perform weakness to make them feel strong. She doesn't chase them. 3 years later, she publishes a small collection. 20 poems. Including the one about her father. The naive, emotional, uncontrolled one that Marco hated. It wins a regional prize. Not a big one, but real. At the ceremony, a young woman approaches. Shy. Nervous. Your poem, she says. The one about your father. It made me cry. It gave me permission to write about my own grief. To not be ashamed of feeling. Isolde's eyes fill. Isolde's eyes fill. That's everything, she says. That's all I wanted. To make someone feel less alone. The young woman smiles. You did. Thank you. And Isolde realizes, Marco was wrong about everything. Poetry isn't about impressing critics. It's about connection. Truth. Shared humanity. It's about one broken person reaching through words to touch another broken person and saying, I see you. You're not alone. That's the only rigor that matters. That night, back at the villa, Isolde sits by the window. Looking at the lake. At the mountains. At the stars. She sees the cat again. Gray and striped. Sitting on the garden wall. Looking up at her window. She opens it. Hello again. The cat meows. Soft. Approving. I did it, Isolde says. What you taught me. I chose myself. Chose my voice. And it was hard. So hard. But worth it. The cat blinks slowly. Then turns and walks away. Into the garden. Into the night. Isolde watches it go. Thank you, she whispers. For playing with my ruins. For showing me that destruction isn't the end. That I could rebuild. That naive is just another word for honest. The cat is gone. But its lesson remains. And Isolde writes. Every day. Honestly. Emotionally. Naively. In her own voice. The only voice that matters. The voice her father would have loved. The voice she's finally learning to love herself. Isolde will write for 40 more years. Will publish 6 collections. Will teach generations of young poets, especially women, to trust their voices. To write from the wound. To value truth over technique. She'll never become famous. Won't win major prizes. Won't be taught in universities. But she'll matter. To the readers who find her work and feel seen. To the students who learn from her that emotion isn't weakness. To the women who need permission to choose themselves over men's approval. She'll have relationships. Some good. Some difficult. None requiring her to be smaller. She'll grow old in the villa. Writing by the window overlooking Como. Visited by cats. Always cats. Gray and striped and wise. And when she dies, at 83, pen in hand, poem half finished, her obituary in the local paper will call her our poet. The woman who wrote Como. Who captured loss and beauty and truth in words. Marco will be forgotten. His criticisms. His certainty. His important opinions. But Isolde's naive, emotional, undisciplined poems will live. Because they were true. And truth outlasts everything. But that's all years away. Tonight, September 1962, torn pages scattered, cat departed, choice made, Isolde sits at her desk. She loads fresh paper. Types the title, The Gray Teacher. And begins. The poem flows. About destruction and play. About men's voices and women's silences. About choosing truth over approval. About cats who teach without words. She writes until dawn. Until the lake turns gold. Until her truth is on the page. When she finishes, she reads it aloud. To the empty room. To the ghost of her father. To herself. It's naive. It's emotional. It's uncontrolled. It's perfect. She doesn't know yet that it will be published. That it will matter. That it will help others. She just knows it's true. And for now, that's enough. Outside, the village wakes. Bells ring. Boats launch. Life continues. And Isolde writes. In her own voice. On her own terms. Choosing herself. Again and again. For the rest of her life. If you're still awake, let this settle in your bones. Know that your voice matters. That naive is just honesty before it learns to lie. That men's approval is not the measure of your worth. Subscribe for more stories from the cat. Stories about women finding their voices. Sleep well. Dream of choosing yourself. Will Isolde's poems reach the readers who need them? Will she find love that doesn't require her silence? Will Marco realize what he lost? We don't know yet. The story is still being written. And that's where we leave her, at the desk, creating, choosing truth, becoming herself one word at a time. The cat knows how it ends. But the cat isn't telling. Not yet.